Hello folks, we come to you not so live from this dry sunny day, which is incidentally one day after the driving lesson I had with Sean, which I think will be my last driving lesson with Sean, because later that evening, Tony rang me. He is the new instructor that I'd called up, and he said, I can slot you in for a lesson tomorrow, which is today, which is the day after that lesson I had with Sean. I've just had the lesson with him, and it was day and night, the difference between him and Sean. It was a good lesson. You know, I said that Sean looked a bit like the Woodlander in my last vid. This guy, I guess, looks, try and visualise him, he looks maybe a cross between Lionel Luthor from Smallville, if he had short hair, and Scott Glenn when he was in the film Vertical Limit with Bill Paxton, if he had short hair. Like a mix between those two with brighter eyes. But he was like, I think he was in his 70s. He might have been mid to late 60s. He might have been in his 70s. He was an older gent. So it was a good lesson. I first got in the car with him, thinking we were going to Yelverton Aerodrome because he's a driving school from Yelverton. But no, he just said, well, that'd waste some of our lessons, so why not just drive around here? So we drove up the road a bit to the next village. Yeah, we started out in this village where I live, and I said, I didn't tell him I'd done like 12 lessons and some lessons recently with Sean. I told him like vaguely that I'd done a couple of lessons in 2009 and that I wanted him to treat me as a beginner, and he took me seriously on that this time. He started going through the workings of the car and everything while we were parked and what everything does, which is quite useful in a way because what he had was a more modern car than what I've been driving in. I was driving with Sean in the kind of old to mid-range Ford Fiesta diesel manual, and the one that Tony had was a modern, fairly new Peugeot 208 diesel manual, which meant it had lots of bells and whistles and had lots of screens. It had a digital readout for the rev counter, which I thought was going to be hard to get used to, but it worked out easier than I thought. I prefer analog everything, and I told him I'm kind of like a neo-Luddite. I like to reject. I've seen modern technology and stuff, but I mostly like to kind of reject it because it's bad. And he was coming at a standpoint of like a technophilic guy. He's like, all right, I've got 3 cameras in the car. Look behind you, look over there, and look over there, and they're all live, and they're recording, and they're beaming the recordings to my iPad that I've got live. And so if you fuck up on any junction or meeting a car or something, I'm gonna bring it up on my little iPad and replay the video to you, just in case you forget what car we just passed. I was like, whoa, okay, we're living in the future here. Also, the main thing that threw me was his car didn't have a handbrake. It had something called a parking brake. So in the car I was driving in before, you had a normal handbrake, which is a stick, and you push the button on the stick and pull the stick or push it down. With this little thing, it was like a handbrake. It was in the place of a handbrake, but it was a little flick switch like you would have on some cars to open windows or whatever. It's like a flick and pull switch, and you don't need to use it for starting off. You only need to. Wait, no, you do need to use it for starting. Wait, hold on. Let me get this right. When you're pulling in, you need to apply it. Pulling in is park, but you don't need to use it for starting off. Also, there's no key in the ignition. It's one of these annoying press a button to start the car thing. And to do that, you have to do something where sometimes you have to hold the clutch all the way down and it'll auto start. Sometimes you have to press the button that says start stop and it'll start. Sometimes you have to hold the button for 5 seconds and it'll start the ignition and bring the engine to life. And it's kind of a little bit confusing. I don't like it. I prefer key in the ignition, turn. That's my thing. That's how it should be. don't like the buttons. Interestingly, he said, well, that's actually a retro feature. That's an old feature, because back in the old days, they had a button to start and stop your car. And then they brought in the key in the ignition to start your car. And now this new car has gone back to the button. So I thought that was a modern thing, but it turns out it was something old cars have. We talked about other things old cars have, like the choke, which use on a cold day in the car in the past, which enriches the fuel to the engine while it's pulled out, and then you push it back in when you get going. He mentioned, like, ask your parents if they'd had something in their old cars called, like, an advance and retard button. I don't know what that was all about, and my mum didn't either, so I don't know what that was. But yeah, it was kind of modern features in the car. The car's got ABS. He said most cars after the year 2000 have anti-lock braking system. And he also showed me that this Peugeot 208 car I was driving in had a feature where it's accelerated for you, because it's got an onboard car computer thing, which is a bit weird to me. I didn't really like it. I like the analog stuff, as I told him a lot. But yeah, when you're in gear 1, climbing a hill, clutch is fully off, and your foot is fully off the accelerator, the car will add acceleration for you, so you look like you're climbing up the hill on the clutch, but you're actually not. It's the car computer accelerating on purpose to stop you stalling. So you just let go of everything and you're like climbing the hill in first off the clutch, like a bit faster than you normally would think that would happen if you had a car without this computer. So it's like kind of surprising to me that it was doing that. It's like some kind of anti-stall feature. So yeah, that was interesting. The car itself had like narrow windows, so you try and look at your left blind spot and you hardly see anything. It's like a tiny little porthole behind the seat rest of your driving instructor. He's got these little things. He's got his wing mirrors, which are very clear, and the front mirror very clear compared to the other car. But he's got these little stick-on inserts, like little mirrors that are like convex, I think you call it. They bevel outward. And I said, well, what are those? They said they're little blind spot mirrors. I said, are they a substitute for looking in your blind spot? He went, no, they're not. You still have to look in your blind spot. But these are called blind spot mirrors. And he said he stuck them on. I said, what? They didn't come with the car? This isn't what the Peugeot 208 looks like? He said, no, I bought these little things from a shop and I stuck them on, and you stick them on the corner of the mirror. Apparently they work better to see things when it's raining. Just going to open a window. Sorry about the noise. Yeah, he said he had these little mirror things, and he said he just like stuck them on, so it's like to the very left of the wing mirror, a little circle mirror is bodged on with glue to the very left of it, and it gives a slightly better view. It gives a better view of the curb, which is helpful, seeing as I didn't know where the curb was. I struggled less with position on this lesson. Like, he had a little knobble on the dash, which was a nice indicator for where the left-hand curb would be. I haven't found a good indicator for whether on the right side, you know, I said in Sean's car there was a little speaker in his Ford Fiesta which lined up perfectly with the white lines. We haven't got to any white line driving yet, but I haven't found what my reference point should be on the right side. But you almost didn't need to, because it's a smaller windows all around you. Everything's slightly framed better, and you can see the road. You feel more like you're in the middle of it, and you don't have to worry about your position as much in that kind of car. Because it's a modern car, I assume it's very expensive, so I wouldn't want to buy it. But yeah, I'm still baffled about what actual car I should try and buy or something. If I pass my test. No real idea, other than trying things I've seen people drive online or things I've seen my parents drive, sort of thing, which is a bit samey. I wouldn't mind trying something new, as long as it's got all the things I need. You know, I'd like analog dials, I'd like key in the ignition, I'd like proper handbrake. I like to see the rev counter clearly and stuff like this. If it could display what gear I'm in on screen, I know you're not meant to rely on that, but as a newbie I would like that. The gear stick was easier to work with. It was one of these gear sticks like Sean's car where you had to lift up the gear stick and go to the left and up to get reverse gear. So to get gear 1 you go left and up. To get reverse gear you pull up underneath the stick, then go left and up even further. And then when you pull it back it rectifies itself, so the spring thing comes back up. I said, what happened if you accidentally were driving along at speed and you accidentally slipped into reverse when you wanted first from like second or third? Can that happen? And he said, it might be able to happen, but it would make the gearbox explode. So I was like, ugh. He said, but you'd need a concerted effort to pull up with the gear, with you know, the underneath thing of the gear stick and go into reverse, so it probably wouldn't happen. But he said it was possible, and he said it would make the gearbox explode. And that's like, that was a bit terrifying. Yeah, he had all this cameras and technology he was showing me. All sorts of techno gizmos. He seemed quite pro modern technology, even though I started talking to him about retro things, he knew about that as well. Yeah, and he was using little books with diagrams to explain to me the clutch and stuff first in quite an assertive way. So that was the you know, when I was trying to get used to his personality, the first impressions were that he was like a stern and rigid and assertive and snappy kind of crocodile person. But then as time went on, he just seemed very friendly in a practical way, and you could ask him about anything and he'd tell you, and he wasn't like impatient, he didn't snap at you, and he let me do more with the car and explore more, whereas if I tried to touch things when Sean was in the car, he would be like, no, don't do that now, and stuff like this, which, you know, which made me afraid to touch any of the controls of the car, basically. So we went through the gears, and I guess he was probably gauging that I was a bit above beginner level as we went through the gears, but we still did beginner stuff. We did moving off from the side of the road. It was a lot easier. The mirrors seemed to show me a drain's width away from the curb, and well, Sean told me you have to be within a drain's width from the curb when you're parking up, so closer is better. So I'd been learning from online videos from like Richard Founders and stuff that when you come into park, you park a drain's width from the curb. Sean says it's like within a drain's width, so you can shrink that distance, and closer is better. But you don't want to touch the curb because it fucks up the wheels, tyres and stuff. The little mirror insert things he had, blind spot mirrors, they helped get close to the curb, and it looks on the main mirror like I was a drain's width from the curb when we stopped at one point by the side of the road. And I said, that's got to be an illusion, hasn't it? I'm seeing it a drain's width through the curb in the mirror, but that's got to be an illusion. It's got to be larger than that in real life because you can't perceive things right. And he opened the door by his foot and showed me the curb, and I looked out over him, and it's like it was exactly the same as it was in the mirror. It was an exact drain's width from the curb. I was like, oh, the mirror is actually showing me exactly what's happening underneath. It's not just like you have to make allowances for extra distances that you can't see and stuff. So I was surprised at that. That was interesting. Yeah, we moved off and on. There was a few sheep to deal with. There was buses, there was trucks passing us. There may have been cyclists. There was a big-ass recycling truck blocking the cattle grid. We drove through residential Brentor, and he took over from me to do a loop of the War Memorial to steer, because he hadn't got me doing complex steering yet, which is good that, you know, we've held off from that because he could introduce me to other stuff. And he actually made me do the emergency stop twice, and that was really interesting, and he taught me tons of stuff I didn't know. Like, he taught me, when you emergency stop, you you're meant to almost instantaneously put the brake down and the clutch down, but you're meant to put the brake down first, then the clutch down, so it's like that, but really fast. And he said, why do you think you wouldn't put the clutch down before the brake? Because it's not like you're going to stall, and actually putting the clutch down first stops you stalling. So it's not an issue of stalling, so why do you think you do that? And I was like thinking about it, going, well, I don't know actually, that's a good point. I've never understood that. And so he goes into how he's told me about engine braking and stuff, and how when you're like drifting in second down the road and you're not putting any, your feet aren't on the accelerator or the clutch, you're drifting in second, you're naturally slowing down as you go, and that's engine braking. But if you were to put the clutch down during that process, it would disconnect the engine while it's slowing down from the wheels, and that effect of the slowing downness of the engine gradually wouldn't be transmitted to the wheels, because it would suddenly have no link. The clutch would come apart from the wheels on one side of the clutch, and the engine and gears on the other would come apart, and while the engine's like slowing down gradually, if they're together and it's slowing down, it slows down the car wheels. But if they're apart and that's slowing down, the wheels are just kind of still just spinning, and they might get faster depending on hills and stuff. So actually your braking distance is increased if you're doing the emergency stop and you put clutch down first because of engine braking. So instead you brake first and then you clutch, and it stopped you way faster. And he got me doing that in gear 2 around 20 miles an hour. We haven't done it at like 30 miles an hour and up, which I assume is more violent than that. He said I did it all right. I think it could have happened in a shorter time. Like I could have done it. I could have improved on it basically. Could have made it happen faster. It's quite a good lesson. I'm trying to remember something else that happened or that he told me. A lot of stuff was said. It was a very action-packed 2 hours kind of thing, because he said at the end of the lesson we crammed in quite a lot of stuff there, because I can see you're above beginner level because you remember a bunch of stuff from these supposed 2 lessons all those years ago. So yeah, he was very patient in a kind of stern way. At one point he was saying, like, I'm going to have to at some point grab the wheel from you if you're doing something and you don't perceive you're doing something, so just at that point stay off the pedals and stay off the wheel. I'll take the pedals and I'll take the wheel. And he said, like, I have been known to crush people's hands doing this. like grabbing the wheel from them. He says, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes I have crushed people's hands while grabbing the wheel, but do not resist. I was like, oh, okay. Right, I know the driving instructors are meant to do this, but the way he phrased it was kind of hilarious. It didn't rain the entire time we're there. It was a nice sunny day, so it made a change from the last 2 lessons with Sean, which it was just pissing it down raining. I didn't have to deal with bad weather, which was a lot better. It's amazing what difference like heavy rain can make to you being able to see everything for a start. I was so much more happy and not losing my road position learning with him. And he jokingly said scary steering at one point, but he said immediately after, no, I'm joking, that's just my sense of humour, you're not actually steering bad. I was like, oh okay, I thought you meant it. He's a good guy to learn with, and I think if I can, I'm going to use him as my instructor to try and take me to test level. I'm sure there'll be some hard days, I'm sure there'll be some bad or difficult moments where I get things wrong. He's not super encouraging or positive, but he's way more encouraging or positive than Sean, and he does tell you what you've done right as well as what you've done wrong. And if you ask him anything about the car, he will kind of talk to you about it, whereas Sean just wouldn't, even though I think he knows. He just doesn't want to talk to you about it, which is odd, I thought. So, yeah, much more comfortable with this guy, Tony. And looking forward to my next lessons. He's actually on holiday next week, so he can't do it next week. He's apparently seeing a lot of students when he is working. So from the week of the 11th of September onward, I might be able to get a lesson with him. I'll probably start booking blocks of 10 with this guy because I felt comfortable with him at the end of the lesson. So yeah, it's been good. And yeah, after the 11th, we're going to see what lesson 4 is like, and I hope I can advance. He says we might go down to the Hellmouth town to do some stuff. You know what I'm talking about, hopefully, if you watch my videos. But not to Yelverton, because the Hellmouth town is more local. And yeah, I think he mentioned we might be able to do some junctions and stuff, so I'll be back on that. And I'll have to see about my steering and whether I can keep position on junctions, because that is my current weakness, I think. Drifting left when turning right into a T-junction, or drifting right when turning left into a T-junction, and not knowing all the different things I've got to do. Oh yeah, also he told me, like, so when you're pulling into park, it always flummoxes me because he's got this little flicky parking brake instead of a handbrake, so you assume it's like a handbrake. You pull into park, you check your mirrors in the direction you're going, and maybe your blind spot, indicate left, move over the car towards the curb, and then gear 1 or bring it to a standstill. And then he says there's a 3-step process going on your left. So you leave the indicator going, and you go. It works its way from bottom to top. So there's something there, there's something there, there's something there, and the bottom thing is handbrake or parking brake, which you flick. You don't, or if you have a handbrake, it's like that. And then the second one that's higher up is gear into neutral, and then, by the way, his gear stick, it's way better than Sean's gear stick. The gear stick of the Peugeot 208 is way better to use than the old Ford Fiesta gear stick, and I bet there must be cars out there which have even better gear sticks than that. I'm sure there must be. That and the indicator stalk is really chunky and goes into place, and you can't accidentally press it. Although having said that, I did accidentally press it once, because it's got a halfway indicator which flashes 3 times, as well as a full-on indicator which constantly flashes. So I did slip into the half-flash indicator at one point. But yeah, it's a 3-step process: parking brake, neutral, indicator off. And that's a really clear routine that I was given for parking in at the left of the road. I really like that, because like immediately he's like, you've got a 3-step staircase on your left here. It's like, what? Well, when you're pulling into park at the left of the road, you've got 3-step staircase sort of thing, haven't you? You go, oh yeah, I have. Like, which is cool. It's so much easier now. It's like, pull in at the side of the road, please. So I check my mirrors especially towards that way, blind spot. Turn in, line up with the curb, which is a lot easier now than it was in the other car. Braking, clutch in, stop, bottom of the staircase, middle of the staircase, top of the staircase. And that just breaks it down into like around 6 really easy, like 3 things over here, 3 things over here, really easy things to get you stopped. And it's just so much more easier now. Like, I was like, oh god, this is, and he's not complaining about my road position and stuff, and my braking, and like Sean was, and it's like, okay, I appear to be doing everything right in this lesson. Anyway, I will stop it there, because I'm blabbing on like a maniac. Anyway, catch you in the next one, guys. Thank you for watching.
Dear me, it's almost 3 o'clock. I've got to get this shipment of sugarcane, tobacco, and spices to the harbour before day's end. That car is coming up awfully fast, but at least it's flying the British flag. Oh no, privateers! No doubt they're after my sugarcane, tobacco and spices. Ha-ha!